There are multiple issues with Apex Legends, both technical issues, a ton of technical issues, and also design issues. In some cases, these design issues are caused or remain unchanged due to technical issues. Either way, I made this video to express what I personally hope will be improved by Respawn Entertainment in the near future. Hopefully the very near future, as near as possible really. Some of the issues Apex has in regards to its controls on the controller are somewhat mind-boggling, to be completely honest. Many of them caused by bad planning before launch, but some are just hard to understand and were introduced well after launch. So I will show you all the issues I personally have with the controls on controller in Apex Legends. And after I listed all my issues, at the end of the video, I will show you how I would fix all of them by using Steam Input, the built-in controller configuration tool of Steam. Let's start with a smaller issue, shall we? And that first issue to me is inspecting your weapon. There are two issues with it. The first one being that you either have to sacrifice your survival item slot to have it ready on a button, or you have to open your emote wheel to trigger the inspect animation. This is especially annoying if you have one of these fancy heirlooms and have to fiddle around in order to use the cool inspect animations that come with them. So this is the first issue, which is clearly a design issue. The second issue is a technical one, because you see, if you use one of Apex's, in my opinion, best quality of life features, called Auto Sprint, you can no longer inspect your weapons or heirlooms while sprinting. I don't know about you, but sprinting around and sprinting to your next location is peak heirloom inspect time. You got nothing to do, so you just trigger the animation to break the boredom of your long and eventless sprint. I can only speculate why this happens, but my layman analysis of this is that the way Respawn devs coded the always sprint feature, a feature that was not in the launch version of the game by the way, is by making the controller spam a constant stream of sprint button inputs when pushing the stick above the threshold at which it activates. If this is true, then this would be an extremely dirty way to implement the feature. Inelegant and dirty. However, I assume it was the quickest way to do it, and the person who implemented it didn't really care if it has a knock-on effect on other elements of the game. It also kinda breaks the double tap sprint feature, since moving your stick forwards and backwards too quickly will turn on your auto sprint, even if you don't want to. So yeah, inspecting and always sprint both have issues. Okay, now onto some of the actually problematic issues. The first one of which would be what I call the D-pad down issue. You see, D-pad down is mapped to a ton of stuff. The main function of all characters is the emote wheel, for which you have to hold D-pad down, meaning simply tapping D-pad down has no main function for many of the characters in the game. Tapping D-pad down is simply mapped to quick chat, and this quick chat is my main issue with it. Quick chat is when your character has something to say, and so you press D-pad down and say it, like "my ultimate is ready" or "thanks." Some characters also have other things to say, like Wraith can say if she's being aimed at, stuff like that. Why is this an issue? Well, because like I said, there is way too much stuff mapped onto this single button, and this can lead to many game deciding issues. You see, D-pad down is also used by many characters to interact with their abilities. Mirage can activate and deactivate his hologram control on D-pad down. Rampart, Loba, and Catalyst can remove their builds with D-pad down. And characters like Crypto and Vantage can recall their companions. It is especially vital for Crypto to always be able to recall his drone. Enemies can shoot the drone down, which will result in a cooldown period during which it is not usable. This includes his ultimate being basically deactivated until the drone is ready again. With the current cluster of bindings on D-pad down, I had the issue now multiple times that I wanted to use one of the interactions listed here, but could not because the quick chat function overrode my ability to recall my drone or replace my wall, leading to a moment of confusion at best and an actually game-altering consequence at worst, where my drone got destroyed because I didn't notice that quick chat cancelled my drone recall input. This means in order to make sure your input actually registers, you would have to always spam D-pad down multiple times just to make sure that the thing you wanted to do actually happens. Given that D-pad down is not exactly the easiest button to reach, this is extremely annoying and quite honestly just ridiculously bad design on the developer's part. So please change this. The next issue is reloading and interacting. Both actions are mapped to the same button. By default, this is the X button on Xbox or Square on PlayStation and Y on Switch. But who plays that version? It should be obvious why mapping two vital functions onto the same exact button can result in issues. If you stand next to a door to block it from unwanted intruders, for example, you literally cannot reload in some cases. No matter where I'm looking at, I cannot reload my weapon. I always open the door. If I stand next to a loot item, I cannot reload if I look roughly towards its direction. So if you're next to a head glitch or a corner and you want to hide there and reload, you often have to make sure you look away and press X or you will not reload. Basically, anything that requires you to use X to interact will cause issues. Caustic gas, Sheila, and worst of all, depending on your settings, reviving a downed teammate. Now many will scream at their screens.
You can change it to hold instead of tapping the button, you idiot!
Well, first of all, calm down, and secondly, yes, this is possible. But both of these settings come with their own issues. Let's first look at the best option available, which is tap to reload, hold to interact. This will solve basically all the clashing of interactions I previously mentioned, which is why this is the best and, in my opinion, only good option currently available in the game. The one issue you will face with this setting, however, is that holding to interact will make looting not only tedious, but also way slower. You see, while it doesn't clash with picking up weapons, it sadly overlaps with it, because swapping weapons is also done by holding X in every setting there is. So quickly looting ammo out of a loot bin can become very tricky if you're in a hurry. The fact that you now have to hold X to take out that ammo pack means you have to make extra sure to not look at the weapon next to it, or be close to it, or you might accidentally throw away your current weapon onto the ground, making your already hectic situation possibly worse. With tap to interact and tap for both, you can just walk past such bins and spam the X or square or Y button and be reasonably sure you will quickly get that ammo you wanted. This is also true if you want to loot a bunch of stuff off the ground real fast. Hold to interact will massively slow you down here. The second option is much worse, for many reasons, one of which is literally keeping you from using an ability of one of the characters correctly. This option is tap to interact and hold to reload. At first glance, a good option. It will keep you from accidentally opening doors when you wanted to reload. This is great. However, because so much in the game is also done with holding X, many interactions will stay an issue, just like with the default setting. So standing near a weapon will override your reload, because to swap weapons you still also have to hold X. Standing near a charge tower console will also override it. A devastating issue if you main Rampart or have a Rampart in your regular party, you will literally not be able to reload Sheila. You see, because this is hold to reload, the reload clashes with the exit Sheila action. If I tap X to reload here, the game will tell me I have reload set to hold X. But if I hold X, I exit Sheila. Great, isn't it? The worst part about this specific issue is that it was not there when Rampart was originally introduced. This issue was added to the game about 2 years ago or so. One day, I think it was around March, an update dropped and broke this. Before that update, you exited Sheila by tapping X if you used this setting. After the patch, you now also exited by holding X, even though you use hold to reload. Apex developers really don't play their own game, it seems. This issue has remained in the game for more than 2 years now. No fix in sight. The last issue with hold to reload is the worst possible scenario, being near a downed teammate, which is something that can happen constantly to you, either after a fight or during a fight, be it him just being around or you hiding in his knockdown shield, which is a very common strategy in dire situations. No matter what you are doing near your downed companion, one thing is for sure, you won't be reloading. No matter where you look at, holding the X button will instantly start the revive animation. You can look away, even be multiple meters behind, in front, or to the side of your teammate. If you're even remotely close, you will just automatically revive instead of reload. So in the end, you have the choice of the default setting, which will absolutely mess with you at any given moment you are even remotely near something you can interact with, the tap to reload and hold to interact setting, which will fix all the big issues, but will make looting slow and tedious, or the hold to reload, which will fix some of the clashes, but not all of them, and will literally not let you reload Sheila, or reload near a downed teammate. The hold to reload option is therefore not viable. The default clashes with many actions, and the hold to interact option is decent, but annoying to use in many scenarios. The final issue will of course be the looting. C controller players have had a disadvantage while looting from the very start. Because the cursor is mapped to the left analog stick, you are simply not able to move while looting. Moving while looting has obvious advantages. You are not a sitting duck waiting for a random Kraber shot to down you out of nowhere, for one. The two reasons why this issue exists now is, number one, looting and moving at the same time was originally an unwanted bug. Even on mouse and keyboard you were never supposed to be able to do this. It was an oversight. Like I said, no one at Respawn plays their own game, so this wasn't fixed before release, I guess. Or they just left it in because they couldn't be bothered to fix it. The second reason this issue stuck around is that the devs hard-coded the left stick to control the cursor, and apparently this would be extremely hard to change now. Apex's spaghetti code strikes again, I guess. By the way, if you map your movement to the right analog stick, you still can't move while looting. Just if you wonder if you can do some console setting trickery where you change the stick in-game and then swap it back in your console settings, nope, you still can't move. So it seems like they really locked the movement on controller, but didn't on keyboard. Again, they simply don't play their own game, it seems. Now I will fix literally all the issues I just showed you by simply using Steam's controller input settings. I will preface this by saying that Steam's controller input mappings are not perfect, so my controls won't work perfectly. Like, I had to map my left stick to WASD to avoid weird hitches in my controls when the game tries to swap from keyboard to controller inputs. I also wasn't able to map buttons to different things depending on my situation. I can, for example, make Steam inputs detect that I'm in a deathbox menu and then change my controls around automatically for that situation. You can map shortcuts to manually switch your mappings for different situations, but I have not done that here, because it's A, very fiddly, and B, extremely buggy still. My fixes here are meant for demonstrative purposes only. They don't represent the ideal condition they should be in, should Respawn ever decide to actually implement any of these to their game. At which point, they of course can integrate them into the game more tightly and to a way higher degree than I can with Steam input. Also, I will use the default button mapping to demonstrate this, just to make it as easy to understand as possible. I personally do not use the default button mapping. I'm a bumper jumper guy, for example, but just imagine the default bindings translated to your bindings. Okay, good. Let's go through the fixes. Here are my controls. At first, you won't notice a difference when looking at my controller inputs on the left. I walk, sprint, jump and crouch just like on the normal controls. I draw my weapon like in the normal controls as well, but I can now inspect by doing a simple press of the D-pad down button. Holding D-pad down, meanwhile, lets me choose an upgrade, and of course opens the emote and spray wheel. No more going into the emote wheel to inspect your weapon. Interacting is also like normal at first glance. I press X and loot or interact. But now let's reload. And where did I map reload to? Well, which button is also related to your gun? The button that draws and swaps your gun, of course. The Y button. Pressing the Y button lets me switch my weapon, like with the official controls. But holding Y will reload my weapon. No overlap with the interact button. And this makes sense logically as well. Y is your gun button, so Y reloads your gun. Now you might wonder,
But Roboman, holding Y holsters your weapon. If it now reloads it, how do you holster it?
well, easy. What happens when you holster your weapon? You pull out your fists, or your heirloom, right? And which button is usually related to your fists and heirloom? The melee button, of course, which by default is on R3. As you can see, pressing R3 normally, I will do a melee attack, as usual. But holding R3 will holster my weapon and draw my heirloom or fists. Once again, no overlap with any other action. Pressing melee, you do a melee attack. Holding melee, you draw your melee weapon. It again and does make sense logically, just like the Y button did. So far, nothing overlaps. I can pull my weapon out, move like normal, reload, do melee attacks, inspect, hold stun my weapon and attack. So far so good, right? Look how easy it is to inspect my heirloom now. But next you might wonder, if D-pad down is inspect and holding D-pad down is quick chat and choosing upgrades, how do you then remove ramparts walls or recall your drone and all the other stuff? Well, I had to find another button that would not overlap with anything and was easy to use, so I chose the L3 button. L3 lets you sprint, but holding down the sprint button will now let you remove walls, recall your drone, or deactivate your arm shield. As you can see, I'm now able to either use the quick chat for when my ultimate is ready, for example, or I can interact with my character's items and companions completely independently from each other. The inputs are not related at all now. Last but not least, we will look at looting. If I open my inventory, you will see that I now move my cursor on the right analog stick. This frees up my left stick to move around. And as you can see, I can even jump, crouch, slide, sprint, switch weapons. Hell, I can even reload my weapons. And none of my inventory management is affected by this at all. If I want to drop only part of my ammo stack, I press the right trigger. See, I only dropped part of it. And when I press my left trigger, I drop the whole stack. I can of course drop my weapon as well by holding your left trigger. Now let's look into a dev box. Works as you would expect from what I've shown you so far. But you might wonder,
How do you scroll now, Mr. Cheap-ass robot avatar, if the right stick is occupied now?
well, rude. And the answer is the right stick while holding L1, aka the left bumper, aka your tactical ability button. Holding down that button will let me scroll with the right stick. Of course, while doing so, all my other controls still work as expected. I can still move around, jump, etc. The scrolling here looks a bit choppy if you are used to the scrolling on a controller. This is of course a limitation by the Steam input settings and would not be like this if Respawn actually officially integrated it. Mapping this L1 button action in Steam input was a nightmare, by the way. Steam input still has so many bugs and issues, like crashers and buggy behavior. But I got it to work, I guess. So, what do you think? Pretty great, isn't it? The rest of the mappings are basically where they are in the default controller mappings already. So, crouching, grenades, survival items, etc. all work as they do now. But as you saw, I fixed basically all the issues the controller players are currently facing. And while switching to my setup here takes some getting used to, I bet most people would get acclimated to these changes within maybe a week of using them. If you want to use my settings, by the way, you can do so by looking for them in the Steam input. I uploaded them to the Steam input community library. Right-click Apex Legends, go to Manage, Controller Layout, then click on this big button where you will find the community-made layouts. On the right, go to the search icon and look for the word Ultimate or Catwalk, and this right here will show up for you. Click on it, click on Apply Layout, and then click on Back. Done. Lastly, in-game, you will have to set your keyboard to default and go down to Cycle Weapons, which you need to map to the 1 key. This is important. After that, you are good to go. But they aren't perfect, however. Like I said, the Steam input feature is a buggy mess, with multiple issues of their own that haven't been fixed in years. Another issue is that you can't integrate the Steam input mappings directly into the game, of course, which means multiple issues persist with my settings that would, of course, not be an issue if this was officially integrated. Due to the nature of how Steam input works, holding down the left bumper in my layout will turn your right stick into a scroll wheel. And because I had to rebind holding the left bumper to do that, you will not be able to aim some of the tactical abilities, so do not expect these to actually be combat-ready settings. They are just there to showcase what could be a great way to do controller inputs should Respawn at some point actually care about making controller inputs better. So do you like my changes? Do you have your own issues with controller settings in Apex? Let me know. And of course, subscribe for more random videos about random video game topics. Bye!